in Mexico, there's a game called Loteria. Loteria is like bingo, but instead of just having numbers, there are images. And these images have been iconic for many years. But what we've done is we put Bitcoin images, memes, concepts. So for example, there's a Max Keiser card. There's a white paper card. And here's the best part. So it's not just a game. If you have a card that matches, we give you 100 sats per card. So what we're really trying to do is, hey, the adoption of let's say your neighbor. Hey, let me tell you about Bitcoin. No. Okay, well, let me show you this game. Okay, sure. Loteria, yeah, of course, I love Loteria. So you show them the game, and it always gets a laugh. That's actually pretty cool. And then being able to say, hey, you just earned your first sats. A sat, what is that? It's actually Bitcoin. It's a fraction of a Bitcoin. Oh, no way, yeah. And what do I have to do? Just keep playing. And eventually, what can I do with these sats?
Hi there. I have a quick favor to ask. Over the past few months, this podcast has had several thousand returning viewers and listeners, but over 75% of you haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying what I'm doing and find my content valuable, consider subscribing on YouTube or following me on your favorite podcasting platform. If you're listening to this on Fountain app, then feel free to boost the show. It'll go a long way in helping the podcast grow and spreading the message about Bitcoin even further. I truly appreciate your support. Now let's dive into this episode. Welcome to Your Bitcoin Story. I'm your host, Gigi, and on this podcast, we dive deep into the journeys of inspiring individuals who are shaping the world of Bitcoin. Today, I'm thrilled to have a very special guest joining us, Francisco from Yopaki. Francisco is a seasoned professional with over 13 years of experience spanning tech, marketing, and sales. Currently, Francisco is leading the charge at Yopaki, a cutting-edge Bitcoin Neobank that's simplifying finance and introducing innovative Bitcoin solutions through culture. His passion for merging financial technology with cultural relevance is driving Yopaki's mission to make Bitcoin accessible, meaningful, and transformational for all. Francisco, welcome to Your Bitcoin Story podcast.
How's it going, Gigi? Wow, that was quite the intro. Can I bring you everywhere to do that intro for me?
Sure, awesome, not a problem. I'm happy to do so. It's funny. A lot of guests, I would say 90% of guests are very flattered by the intros. I put in a little bit, proof of work into propping up the guests, just to hit it off on the right vibe. We don't want to do the usual. May you introduce yourself with a few words? Like I like to do my homework and prep for that.
Man, that's amazing. So you probably get a 99.99% of people smiling within the first 5 seconds of the podcast.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I see them in the bottom screen of the camera. They're just sitting there like all smiling. Like, is that really me? That's me? So it's a great way to start.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure to have you on. And as we always do on this show, let's take us back to memory lane. Where does your Bitcoin journey begin?
This is one of my favorite questions that I've addressed in a few pods, but every audience has access to different podcasts. So, of course, I love to talk about it because mine in particular is opposite of what a lot of Bitcoiners, let's say our generation, is going through, which is we're trying to convince our parents and our uncles and all the people we love into understanding why Bitcoin, what it is, and why it's going to change the world. In my particular case, it was actually my dad that introduced me to Bitcoin. And it's going to kill you. 2012. I mean, this is how far back he goes. And to be honest, he didn't know it all. He just was aware of it. I guess by birth, he's been a libertarian in views in a lot of things. He wouldn't call himself that, but just his views are very libertarian. And Austrian economics, that's just how he has lived his life. 2012, I was living a very fiat life, we can go into that in a second, but he said, hey, son, so I've been reading about this cypherpunk movement, and there's this thing called Bitcoin. It's based on blockchain technology. And, within the first few words, I said, oh, man, here we go. And he asked me, can you please help me do some research on it? And let's get some. So my first reaction was that this sounds like a Nigerian type of email scam. So just let it go. And I honestly, I did. I said, done. Like, no more conversation. A couple of months go by, and he brings it up again. Hey, remember a couple of months ago I told you about this? I think there's something interesting there. I think you would like it. Please help me understand it. I said, Dad, we already talked about this. Just forget about it. I mean, really, didn't even look into it. Like, I didn't even ask him the questions of, well, where did you hear about it? Why? Who told you? Like, it was just a plain no. And it's a super long story. So to make the super long story short, in 2013, he goes, okay, that's fine. I've asked you a couple of times. If you're not going to do it, that's okay. But at least help me get some, right?
Mm.
Just a little bit. And then he said, and I will buy a little bit for you. Like, and I'm talking like $50 for it. It's not like anything major. I said, okay, Dad, let's do it. So I did. I helped him get some, and then I got my $50 worth at the time, which the first time we bought, I mean, it wasn't around, I believe, 800 maybe.
Nice. That's a few
And
million
then he said,
stats.
okay, that's exactly. And then he goes, okay, one more thing. So now that you've done this, I mean, I think that there's a guy that you might spend some time with and you might enjoy him. He's a little crazy, or, he's got his own style, but spend maybe an hour just watching his content. His name is Max Keiser.
Wow.
So, yeah. Again, my dad's like RT 2012 watching Max Keiser and Stacy at the
That
time.
was me,
So,
guilty. By the way, sorry for interrupting. The first time I heard
that's so awesome.
Bitcoin on like
That's so
normie
awesome.
TV was Max Kaiser. I was living back in London at the time, and I
Okay.
loved the Kaiser show. And yeah, he was rambling about Bitcoin. Dumbly enough, I didn't act on it. I did the pure whatever, went in this ear, flew out that ear.
Yeah.
I was a pure student,
Yeah.
It was all about socializing, getting high, and not actually investing into self-sovereign money. It was a different period of time. But Max Kaiser was the first person that I actually, fully heard it on TV. So I can fully relate.
Jeez, man. You touched on a point that I think a lot of us have gone through, which is we have been exposed to it or heard about it. And Max Keiser has been obviously a proponent for a long, long time. And yeah, we just ignored it. It takes time. It really does take time. Even today, with everything that's available and now even Wall Street getting in again, it takes time. So I did watch Max, and I thought, okay, my dad was right. He's definitely different, but the dude is smart. I
Mm.
mean, you can tell, right? And he has a history in also Wall Street. So money and the way it works and investment is not a foreign concept to him. So that was my first introduction into Bitcoin. After watching Max Keiser, I thought, okay, maybe there's something to it. Didn't really buy any much beyond that. But then fast forward, and I started reading more books, the few podcasts that were available at the time, and then of course the best marketing for Bitcoin has always been number go up. Once that started happening, that's when I thought, man, my dad was up to something. This is really fun, and that's my introduction to Bitcoin. It was my dad who made this possible, and he's had a nose for things like this for a very long time. The older I get, the more I think, oh man, he's been right.
It,
And then, of course, I did my journey of mistakes with checkpoints and stuff, which I paid the price. It was part of the journey.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I've done 75 plus episodes of tell me how does your Bitcoin story start, and you
Nice.
are literally the first one. As you said, you have a very unique one where your dad actually told you, "Hey, Francisco, help me out. Give me some
Help me.
Bitcoin." Where today most people are still trying to convert their parents into looking into Bitcoin, and you had it the total different way out. So talk about unique story. That's
It
definitely
is
up
it
there.
is it is backwards, but I'm grateful. I'm really grateful. Again, this story really takes many different side avenues. Eventually, when I met Max and Stacy in person, which by the way I didn't know they were this approachable at the time. I shared this, and Max goes, I mean, you probably have met Max, but if you haven't, I mean, he's
Not
incredible.
yet.
He goes, man, when you do, he's such a good guy. He goes, wait, what? That's your story? He's like, okay. He's like, take out your phone. We're gonna record a video. And so he records a video of himself thanking my dad for showing me the light. And
Amazing.
yeah, and ever since, both Max and Stacy have been actually a big part of what I've been really building and believing in terms of just strategy and expansion and whatnot. So yeah, that's
TLDR,
That's how my Bitcoin story.
the short story of how Francisco got orange pilled. Yeah, and just to touch upon Max and Stacy, just in a matter of like a decade, how they went, Max preaching on RT about, buy Bitcoin. Now he's, they are living in El Salvador, essentially guiding the first country in the world that made it a legal tender. And who knows what they're going to do in the next 10 years. It's just like leading by example.
That's so true.
What a time to be alive.
That's so true, man.
Could you hold just 1 second? My beagle wants to leave the room, so I gotta he's not enjoying the story for some reason. Sorry about that, Francisco. He's heard these stories.
Shirt. That's a good shirt.
What is your Bitcoin story? Look what it says on the back.
That's so nice. That's so nice.
And I've got the QR code. When people ask me in the street, they go, "What's this?" I go, "Oh, scan it," and they go straight to the pod.
Oh, okay. Very nice.
Because the podcast used to be called "What is Your Bitcoin Story?" a podcast. But I recently renamed it to Your Bitcoin Story just to make it catchier. Plus, I'm about to launch, most people don't know, in January, I'm going to launch a Bitcoin mentoring service. So people that have been listening to the pod, I want to, give them an opportunity, which I think is pretty unique. There's no other Bitcoin podcaster where you can book a one-on-one call and just like have him run down whatever you need, non-KYC Bitcoin or cold storage or multi-sig or inheritance planning. There's so many things and so many people coming in.
That's very clever. That's great.
It's a nice way to intertwine because actually this month is my first month of going full-time into this. So I resigned from my fiat job last month. I was actually working 2 fiat jobs in advertising and publishing, and I've been DCing for years now. And at some point, and I'm actually turning 32 next Wednesday in a week. And I'm like, time's going. I've got 2 young kids. Like, I don't want to do this crap all my life. Like, I want to dedicate my time to Bitcoin. And I was always waiting for the moment. And now where we are and what we're going into, and Trump winning the election, I was like, nah, this is it. I'm like resigning.
This is the time.
I gave him my notice. So that's why I renamed it now to Your Bitcoin Story, because it's not just a pod about what is your Bitcoin story. I want to help people start their Bitcoin stories. So yeah, that's the little TLDR.
Man, that's amazing, and that's really smart. And maybe we can talk another time. We can talk offline or whatever.
Sure.
If I can help in any way too, spread what you're doing. That's really cool. Because you're right. There's an element of podcasting that definitely there's a connection, right? So the host, the questions and the answers, and that's cool. But then what if there's more?
Of course.
I think you're opening something special. I think that it could potentially create a standard for people to start doing that too. So this is very clever.
I was going to say, yeah, because, like one thing is like if you listen to someone like regularly every week and then you get a chance to speak to them, it's like, it's so much, it feels like you know the person already. So it's not like going to a Bitcoin 100%. Advisor and scheduling a call and you have no idea who you're talking to. And this trust element is super important in Bitcoin. So who knows, maybe it won't work out. Personally, I think it will work out, but let's see. That's my plan. But yeah,
that's great, man. Congrats.
Sorry for that interruption, but I gave you some. I gave you some exclusive of what's happening in Gigi's next month. So let me remember now. Yeah, we finished it on Max. Okay, so
yeah, we brought it back to them now. Have been really cool and have helped in making decisions for the business and also encouraging. I guess starting a Bitcoin, not just a Bitcoin believer, but hey, have you considered doing something in Bitcoin?
So tell me, Francisco, so from that point, like from, let's say 2015, after you started, going deeper down the rabbit hole, doing your proof of work, learning about Bitcoin, reading, listening to podcasts, how did your kind of route lead you towards Yopaki? Or did you do something prior to Yopaki in the Bitcoin scene?
You know what? I did, or I guess maybe I was attempting to, because the idea of Yopaki didn't really form fully at its current stage until maybe about a year ago, like a year and a half ago, when I had a co-founder join. And I'll tell you the moment that I realized I have to do something in this space. Like, I don't know what it's going to be and how and when, but I have to in 2021. So in 2021, the Bitcoin conference in Miami, which actually wasn't in Miami, it was in Wynwood, which is, it's the sister city. This is the one where Jack Mallers, announced the president potentially at the time
where he had an emotional moment on stage.
Very, very emotional, man. And the energy, and I've talked to other Bitcoiners and other entrepreneurs in the space that were there that shared the same moment of just, it was really magical. Just being there, watching Mallers present that, having Bukele appear on that screen, And then what followed, there was this synergy of, man, like I have to do something. So I think that was, to me, that was it. That was the moment. And at the time I thought, you know what, maybe it's going to be some sort of consulting. Maybe what my dad did for me, I can do for others. Maybe it's going to be helping people buy Bitcoin off of exchanges and then helping them to take it to cold storage. At the time, and even as of today, there are no Bitcoin only exchanges in Mexico, which is where I'm from. I was born and raised in Mexico. I lived in the States for a long time, but that's still my home, right? I go back and forth. And I guess in 2022, when I moved to Austin, there's a big community, as you know, of Bitcoiners here. On-chain Capital, the Bitcoin Commons, and people like Parker Lewis and Opleblab. All these people are very welcoming in terms of just not just Bitcoiners, but if you're interested in crypto, you come in and say, well, let me tell you the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. And then if you decide to stay, you'll find out that it's an whole
They give you a cleansing.
It really is. It's a cleansing. And you know, and some people don't stay, and some people do, and the ones that do support each other. I would say that there's a very collaborative effort in Austin, even with potential competitors. So that was the first. So 2021, first time I thought Yopaki can be some, or at the time it wasn't even Yopaki. My fiat, and I think it's important to talk about this, and I'll spend maybe just a minute and a half on this. Prior to Yopaki, I had three very, very fiat-based jobs. So first, I was in the marketing and social listening analytics space, which really, if you think about it, listening is kind of like surveillance, right? Like there's software that allows you to see and create reports on what the conversations are online, of Twitter. Positive sentiment, negative sentiment, what's the context, who's saying it, what time are they saying it, where in the world, all that kind of stuff. And I did that for two different startups. Then I transitioned into the ESG space, the corporate social responsibility, environmental social governance, which, as we know, it's a scam. But I mean, it was a startup, and I was recruited to start developing the go-to-market strategies in Mexico and Latin America. So it was a good opportunity, but again, very fiat. And the other job I had was in the payment card industry, which is really the mafia of Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover. These guys get together and then they create standards for merchants to basically pass through, IP addresses, pen testing, all of that kind of stuff.
The middlemen to rent seekers.
It really is. All of this very fiat. And, for these companies, I help them develop markets, especially in LATAM, starting with Mexico and then the rest of LATAM. Having done this 3 times, there's a moment of, wait a minute, I keep doing this for others. I'm growing their business. I'm setting foot in countries. I think it's time for me to do it. But again, I didn't know exactly how. Fast forward to 2022, get to Austin, and the community starts saying, oh, if you want to start a business, you got to talk to Bitcoiners. What is it that's needed? And now we come to the section of the Bitcoin exchange for Mexico. Little did I know that Mexico is very, very peculiar about certain laws and regulations. Mexico is probably, I would say, one of the countries that has the hardest and most strict regulations for the ability to sell Bitcoin, which is why there's one company that does that, really large company. They dominate all of LATAM, but they're the equivalent to maybe a Binance or a Coinbase, where they sell you Bitcoin and then 300 other tokens and things that are just confusing. Then, by being in the Bitcoin community in Austin, someone from a company, I don't know if you know Mimi Wallet, but Tony,
of course.
the CEO.
Unfortunately, they're shutting down at the end of the year, but I hear they're doing some good things going forward. So yeah, I'm aware of it.
They're brewing some stuff, man. They're cooking. They just changed their wallet into something else, but they're still around. So I talked to Tony and I mentioned this dream and this idea of having a Bitcoin only exchange in Mexico. So he said, you know what? I know a guy that has worked in Bitcoin. He's also Mexican. Do you know Carlos Chida? Like, no, I don't know. Little bit. I found out later on that we were following each other on Twitter, which is one of those weird moments. But so he connects,
especially when you both have an account, right? You're like, oh, you're that guy.
So he connects us both. We have a conversation, and I straight up say, hey, man, So I want to build something in Mexico. I do have certain connections because of my past fiat life. However, I'm not I mean, I understand some code, but I'm not a developer. He is full stack developer. He's a quant. I mean, the guy is like math wizard. And he goes, "This is great. I've also been thinking about doing something in Mexico, but I don't want to do the part that you would be doing. So this sounds like a good partnership." We get together, and now fast forward to today. Of course, there's been a few pivots here and there, which is normal for a startup. We didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, but yeah. So Yopaki was born from a connection in Austin, connecting two Mexicans that had lived outside of Mexico. It's really strange how this all played out.
It's amazing. And that's what I love about this space in Bitcoin. People from the outside, they think, we're just speculative gamblers looking for the numbers to go up. But actually, it's the community that drives this space and the connections and the support from each other. I don't know of any other industry where everybody's so collaborative, everybody's so welcoming. True. There is no like, I'm going to keep this code secret for myself. It's all about open source, helping out each other. Because if I help you, you help me, and we all win. And I don't think there's any other industry, even AI, that's picking up now. Everybody's secretly in their walled gardens building their LLMs. And let's not even talk about the industry I'm coming from, advertising. It's all about holding your clients and not sharing anything, and it's all like their own strategies. But like Bitcoin is really let's get together, build something to make the world a better place. And that's what I love about this place. So it doesn't surprise me that, you found your co-founder in this space at the time that you did. And actually, like the yin and yang, right? Like it wouldn't make sense if you both have the same skills, right? But the fact that he's a programmer, 100%. You have more kind of go-to-market strategy. You need that perfect combo. Just like in a couple, I always say, like having a supportive in the right and like the opposite wife or husband is super important to be balanced. Because if you're just like, if you're both the same, you're going to crash. You need that balancing out. So I can fully relate.
No, you nailed it, because we, obviously we've gone through the journeys of, what are our roles? What do we do? When this decision has to be made, who makes that decision? And time and time again, what you mentioned, the skill set, I'm really grateful that this happened. Of course, like any relationship, nothing is absolutely perfect, but it's those moments that we find that, oh, this is what you were trying to do. Okay, let's regroup, and it's pretty special, man. It's really cool. And again, it happened because of people I met in Austin, which is really, like you said, the space does provide that type of unique trait to Bitcoiners that, yes, even amongst us entrepreneurs, we're competing, but if we can help each other, I think that for the most part, I don't know if everybody, but I think that I feel this way. The market will decide. So if I can help someone that maybe is doing something similar and vice versa, and we're both putting our best effort, and the market decides that what I do is better or what you do is better, then that's fine. Ultimately, the bigger mission is really the Bitcoin into people's hands. And that's a whole nother, like that's a huge hassle, even today, right? Even today, as Bitcoin keeps going up and it's been fun, the reality is sometimes being, amongst Bitcoiners, we really think, oh yeah, this is it. Like the world is going to go into the Bitcoin standard. And we're really,
I know.
There's a lot of effort. Yeah.
I say this a lot of time, like we, as Bitcoiners, that are hardcore down the rabbit hole, we're like in this echo chamber, this orange echo chamber, when we're like, Bitcoin standards everywhere, but actually you go out to the street and you ask like the average pre-coiner. I don't call them no coiners. I call them all pre-coiners, because sooner or later they're going to have to adopt it. But like we're so early. Like I tell them about Bitcoin and Lightning and everything, and they're like, wow, like what are you talking about? And then I'm realizing so like, true. We are like so ahead of our times. But then zooming out, it's only been Bitcoin's going to be celebrating its 16th birthday next month. I mean, like it's 16 years. It's not 60 years or 600 years. It's 16 years. And like the stuff that's already been achieved, wow, the next 15 years or even 10 or 5 years. I mean,
no, I think you're
it's going to get crazy.
I think you're right. Even with what you said about the election, like, yeah, even if Trump comes out with some strange crypto, not just Bitcoin, which that's probably what's going to happen. Even with that, I think that it does accelerate things. You're right. It could be 5 years, maybe not for the entire world using Bitcoin as a,
means of exchange for everything.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? It's going to be fun. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, and I was gonna say, Bitcoin really doesn't have like an official motto, but if it could pinch one famous one, I think it would be the Nokia Bitcoin connecting people, because going back to it really is this connector plug, and especially kind of the place where we find ourselves in the world today. It's like so chaotic with like nonsense happening left, right, and center, stupid wars happening everywhere, just stupid regulations, migration. I mean, just like you name it, like the world is going through some dark times. And then like Bitcoin is this array of like shining hope light where you're like, I'm happy to get up every day and do what I'm doing, keep on pushing and striving, to work on this protocol because it gives you hope. And without Bitcoin, all of us would be in a pretty dark and depressive place, if we just have that, rat race fiat job where there's no prosperity, there's no hope.
You nailed so many good points there. Because really, no, really, because it really expands into everything, right? And I know this is the part where some people say, "Oh, you guys are a cult," but it really does expand into relationships and being a better communicator, being a better friend, being in shape, eating better. Like it's weird how this all comes together. And I agree. What you said, if it wasn't for this magical protocol, it would be a very, very depressing world. Yeah.
And you know why I think that is, Francisco? Like to me, what Bitcoin represents? It like represents a mirror. Or you come to this mirror and you look at it and you suddenly see things about yourself that you never questioned, like the diet that you eat, the physical fitness, the spending habits, especially, kind of this consumerism world. And you should know that very well as well, coming from the marketing background. It's all about like sell stuff.
So true.
But
true.
When you start living yourself on a Bitcoin standard, which I have been for the last few years, ask me when's the last time I bought myself something. Well, probably the studio equipment was was the last big purchase. But I don't go out like I did before and buy like 10 pairs of sneakers in a year or like 10 jackets. I don't know, just junk. Like everything I question. And it's funny, like I denominate everything in sats. And then, having 2 young children.
Yeah.
As you know, you buy a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of toys and a lot of cushions.
I have kids too. No, I totally get it.
So you can relate, right? And then we're there in the shop, and I'm like thinking, is this toy worth 30,000 sats? And it's like, a kid really wants it. And it's like, all right, we'll get this one, but we don't need all of them, type of thing. But it's fascinating, like people, if anything, can take away, the listeners, like try living on a Bitcoin standard for a month and see how you're spending, And the other thing is, sometimes I buy more expensive things because I know, if I spend a little bit more, it's going to last a lot longer instead of buying the cheapest thing that's in the shop. And then it lasts you 2 months and then you go out and buy another thing and another thing and another thing. So Bitcoin really changes your spending habits, which
the mindset really is it is true. Different. And what you mentioned, there's things that you do need to spend on, for example, equipment.
Of course.
For I don't know, recently, let's say for us, the CTO, so Carlos has a really nice computer. I have a very regular computer. Makes sense, right? I just need it for day-to-day work. He needs it to program.
Of course.
And those little habits that it really changes the mindset. Yeah, I love hearing about this from like-minded.
No, for sure.
Plebs.
So to spin it back to Yopaki, as you said, there's been a lot of challenges, especially kind of the jurisdiction that you chose, Mexico. And I didn't know this. This is a new lesson to me. I had no idea that it's so hard to spin up a Bitcoin exchange essentially in Mexico. What would you say? Not listing everything, but like what would be like probably your biggest or 2 biggest challenges that you faced so far on this journey of getting Yopaki up and running?
Yeah, that's actually a very good set of questions. So one thing that I'm going to share with you that not many people know, if you do that enough research, you find out. But there is a misconception in our space, in the Bitcoin space, that Mexico needs banking. The whole banking beyond bank.
Yeah.
In theory, it sounds really nice. But Mexico, and I'm not going to speak for the rest of Latam, Mexico specifically is not the case. In Mexico, there is the equivalent of a 7-Eleven, right? Like the US has 7-Elevens. Okay. In Mexico, there's a store called Oxxo. Oxxo is like a 7-Eleven. They're everywhere. There's more than 20,000 of those.
Wow.
And for those people that do not have let's say, a bank account that they went to the bank and opened one, anyone can walk into an Oxxo, and within 20 minutes, they can walk out with a Visa card and an app, that gives them access to some sort of banking. Not everything,
Wow.
but some sort of banking. So that story of poor people of Mexico, let's help them get into it. It's not quite true. And I understand. Philosophically, I, as a Mexican, also thought, oh, I'm going to help the people. But it doesn't work that way. One thing we did find out is that it's extremely fragmented. So what that means is that there's almost too much. And not one fintech gives you everything you need. So for a typical Mexican that's doing day-to-day banking, you will probably need 10 to 15 different apps. One to pay your electricity, one to do your banking, one to do your sending payments to your family. If you wanted to invest in Bitcoin, then you would need a Bitcoin app. But then this app also sells you hundreds of tokens. Then if you wanted to have access to financial instruments or securities, then you need a different app. But to open this app, it's a nightmare. So when we identified this problem, we thought it's crazy that no one has really thought of combining it all and making it easy for this transactions, which takes me now to the regulation part. So we found out that in Mexico there's a law literally called the FinTech law, and this started all the way back in 2018. So for any company to give their clients access to their Mexican peso in their app, and the ability to buy and sell Bitcoin, and the ability to buy and sell any other securities, you need said license. This license on average takes about 2 years to get, if you get it, because the paperwork is about this thick. It's very expensive. It's time consuming. It does require a lot. And to be honest, again, we knew it was going to be difficult, but at this stage, we're like, wow, now we know why others haven't, or maybe they tried and then they realized Mexico is just too much. Because it makes sense for the US entrepreneurs to say, Mexico, there's 130 million people. The wealth of Mexicans has actually doubled in the last 10 years. And I'm just giving you some stats because, we've been deep into numbers. So let's bring in a solution. Then fast forward and then find out that, oh, wow, it's actually very difficult to do this. For us, we're happy to share that we are in that process. Unfortunately, we are going the regulatory way. That's the only way we can offer all of the services we want to implement. And having said that, as of right now, we do have a wallet which is powered by Breeze. The wallet itself is non-custodial. So for those Bitcoiners that are just testing the Lightning Network and wanting to see how it works, how fast it is, no KYC and all that stuff, they can use their wallet. For the next 6 months, when Mexicans have access to all of the services, there will need to be KYC. Implemented. Unfortunately, that's the evil necessary we need to play by. But we still see this as an opportunity for Mexicans to get access to Bitcoin and understand that, hey, you don't have to really touch 100 tokens or 100 check coins or get confused by that. Now, you download it, sure. And if from here you need help in taking it into self-custody.
Quick interruption, folks, because your seed phrase deserves better than a napkin in your sock drawer. We've partnered up with Stampseed, the legends of professional-grade metal stamping tools. Their patented tools are made from solid titanium, the indestructible kind. You hammer your seed phrase letter by letter, so it's literally etched in stone. Well, titanium, but you get the idea. No loose pieces, no oops, my letter shifted around, and 0 points of failure. Perfect for wallets, multi-sig setups, or if you're planning to pass your Bitcoin empire to your kids. Mount it to a wall, stash it under a desk, or hide it like a treasure map. Use code BTCstory for a 15% off site-wide discount, because your seed phrase shouldn't be left to chance. Visit stampseed.com and order your personal stamping kit today. And now, let's get back to the episode.
We can help you with that process. So that's kind of the philosophy we're approaching.
Nice.
And then the other part that you touched on in your opening is we are doing this through culture. So that's one big piece of our equation, which I don't know. Should I keep going? Or
I was going to say, do you see my follow-up question on the screen? Or I was literally waiting for you to finish to ask you about, so where does the cultural aspect come in? And then you mentioned it. So go ahead.
That's awesome. I actually did see it. So in This is great. Good timing. So in Mexico, there's a game that, the game bingo, just
Of course.
numbers and then you match. Okay. So in
The
Mexico,
ultimate
there's a similar
pensioners game. I don't know how it is in Mexico, but everywhere in Europe, like you go past a bingo and it's all like 60, 70-year-old people like with their things.
Is
No,
that
there are
right?
not that many young people, surprisingly. I don't know how it is in Mexico. Do young people go to bingo?
Yeah, so not in that form that you mentioned, which is really popular in the US, also for a certain generation of people. But in Mexico, there's a game called Loteria, right?
Okay, yeah.
Loteria is like bingo, but instead of just having numbers, there are images. And these images have been iconic for many years. And just to kind of give you I do like talking about this because this is like the history part of why we came up with it. So Loteria itself comes from Italy all the way back to the 14th century.
Wow.
I mean, this is how old this game is. Italy started it, then it transferred over to, it trickled over to Spain. Spaniards adopted it in the 15th century. Then Spain, as you might know, conquers Latin America, but Mexico, at one point when Spain conquered Mexico, it was called La Nueva España, the New Spain.
Yeah.
And they bring all these games, which at the time, it was only played by royalty, right? It wasn't available to the lower classes. Fast forward, Mexico declares its independence, and then in future wars, the military used it to give it to the soldiers and give them something to entertain themselves with. The Catholic Church used it to teach people concepts of Christianity. Then in the 60s, retail used it to help people understand the different types of canned goods that were available after the Revolutionary War. So this game has been used for hundreds of years in Mexico to really, again, whether it's religion, whether it's entertainment, and then retail. And so far, no one had ever used it to Bitcoinize an entire country. So this is kind of where the idea where it came from. That
Amazing.
Everybody in Mexico, when I say everybody, I really mean everybody. Whether you're a kid or 80 years old, everybody knows this game. It's played during birthdays, holidays, sometimes just as a gambling product. It's just fun. Kids love it because of the images. But what we've done is we put Bitcoin images, memes, concepts. So, for example, there's a Max Keiser card. There's a white paper card. There's a Plague Lab. And one of the fun things that's coming out of it is in the next couple of months, we'll be doing additional collaborations with Bitcoin companies to represent, hey, this company, let's say, it could be a cold storage wallet.
Yeah.
And this is what they do, and this is how they do it. And here's a call to action to understand how they do it. This game, Loteria, has no negative connotation in the country because everybody's so attached to it. And as of right now, it's been spreading pretty nicely in the country. It's not just a game, by the way.
Question: Do you play this? Do you play this like in how do people play? Is it like a website, or it's within the app, or it's a physical thing?
It's within the app. Absolutely,
Okay.
It's within the app. As of right now, it's available on App Store, and before the end of the year, it will be available on Android as well. So
Amazing.
For both, it's available in 29 countries. And here's the best part. So it's not just a game. If you have a card that matches, we give you 100 sats per card. So what we're really trying to do is, hey, the adoption of let's say your neighbor. Hey, let me tell you about Bitcoin. No. Okay, well, let me show you this game. Okay, sure. Loteria, yeah, of course, I love Loteria. So you show them the game, and it always gets a laugh. That's actually pretty cool. And then being able to say, hey, you just earned your first sats. Sat, what is that? It's actually Bitcoin. It's a fraction of a Bitcoin. Oh, no way. Yeah. And what do I have to do? Just keep playing. And eventually, what can I do with these sats? Oh, well, if you want to use those sats, you can actually transfer them into your Yopaki wallet, which is also included within the app. And how do I do that? So, of course, it's a tutorial and so on and so on. The idea here is let's make it fun and connected to the most iconic cultural thing that Mexico has. I'm not kidding you. Maybe you can Google it after you're done. There are few things that are more Mexican than this. I mean, maybe there's like tacos, tequila, mariachi, and then there's Loteria.
Insane. I love it. The fact that you've kind of integrated this super cultural kind of like, I wouldn't call it a symbol, but like something, that people have been passionately, indulging in for centuries, and now bringing into Bitcoin and getting people to orange pill via playing the game that they love is amazing. I've just recently, as I told you off the record, I had Oliver from Jippy on, and I like how, they're kind of doing their Pokemon to go, app, like basically making Bitcoin education through gamification, which I think is definitely needed more for. And you guys are also doing it in your own way, which is kind of related specifically to the Mexican demographic. As you said, you're targeting 130 million people. Like, it's a huge market. And I'm sure also in other LATAM, maybe it's not as big as in Mexico, but like Loteria must be a popular, game in many Spanish speaking regions.
You're 100% right. Yeah, you're right. I wouldn't say it's 100% known in the rest of Latam, but it's probably about 65, 70%. And in some countries more than others. So for example, like Colombia, El Salvador, Argentina, very well known. And then you have Brazil, Chile, some of the more southern ones. Maybe it's more of a 50-50. And fun fact about Oliver, so we're good friends. In fact, so when you download Yopaki, you have access to Loteria, you have access to our wallet, but you also have access to the first few modules of Jippy on
nice.
So we did a collaboration.
This is like a pleb lab intertwining. You help me, I help you out. I love it.
It totally is.
Amazing. So now I want to ask you a personal question. Yopaki, does Yopaki have is it something to do with Loteria, or where does the name Yopaki come from?
Yeah. So that's a cool question too. We did play a little bit with the name. We had to shorten it, but the word itself comes from the Aztec language.
Okay.
The Aztecs were the biggest civilization in Mexico City, and this language is called Nahuatl, which is it's a dialect that's almost dead. I believe as of today, there's less than 20,000 people that speak this language. The rough translation of what Yopaki means, it's the pursuit of happiness into today's terms. Yeah.
Amazing. I love it. It's really hard nowadays to brand something and give it this unique name and not just be another, I don't know, it doesn't matter, but like names nowadays, they're so generic. It's so like dry and then I was like Yopaki. I was like, Yopaki. Like it sounds like a fun word, and I was like, what does that word mean? And as you said, the fact you like playing with your cultural heritage, Francisco. I love it. Going back to the Aztec language and the pursuit of happiness. It's amazing. To be honest, I think it's the perfect name.
Thanks, brother. Yeah, JG, thank you. That's cool. You're right though. I think I've had this conversation with other founders, and you're right. Sometimes, especially as we continue growing into Bitcoin becoming more available, it is tough to just call everything bit this or bit that, or
Of course.
But yeah, for us, the cultural connection definitely is very alive from the game itself, from the name, and the future projects that we have on the roadmap. Right now, it's really going on we're testing. The market is receiving it with a lot of joy. But like any product, as you know, in advertising, it will have a cycle that it'll have to eventually go down. So we have to think of, okay, what's something else that people will keep coming back for? Not just the Loteria, or even not just the number go up. What happens when there is a bear market, which we will have at some point?
Yeah.
How do we maintain users interested and really knowing what Bitcoin is beyond just the number go up? So that's the goal, right? Using culture, which Mexicans are very, very attached to our.
Well, the good thing about culture is that there's no bear market in culture. Culture is a stable coin. It's always, people are always happy, no matter if times are good, times are bad. Culture is not going anywhere. But you brought up a really good point, especially for startups. They always think, the first 6 months, 12 months will be the hardest. We get it to the market, and then it's just, rocket takes off. But things go in a cycle, and we are. A lot of people on Twitter are saying that, this time it's different. And I don't know if it's that different. Even if we go to $1 million a coin next year, there's still going to be a bear market. Like the market doesn't always go up. So like, what is your strategy for, tackling once the market cools down is super important. So I like that you're kind of already, thinking a few steps ahead. But going back to where we are now, kind of closing 2024, going into 2025, and kind of the bull market, just gearing up to really kick off. I think your, launching of the things in the next few months will be kind of really good, because I really have a sense there's going to be a lot of demand from people that have never touched Bitcoin to like, what is this? How do I get started? And it's like, oh, wow, like I can play Loteria with it and actually get some sats. Like, that's the perfect part, instead of like thinking, how do I invest some, but like first try it out and, get to experience, a Lightning transaction. When, most people, when I talk to about Bitcoin and, I tell them, just pull out, let's do Wallet of Satoshi or whatever, Lightning, let me send you some sats. They're like, no, but it's like, I don't have time for them. Like, listen, man, do you have 3 minutes? Yeah, I have 3 minutes. And it's like, boom, open your app store or Play Store, bam, download, doof, open QR code, Zoom, done. And then like the pupils just go, they're like, oh my God. Like once they experience it, you're done. And then it's like, here's some literature, here's some podcasts that you can listen to, and if you got any questions, always happy to help. But, it's important to have this first transaction, because from then it's like, wow, like this is real. It's not just, some crazy guys online talking about some digital currency.
This is why it's so important what you're doing too. And I agree. It's because I tried it too. You can't just walk to someone and say, well, let me tell you about decentralized money. That just doesn't work. And it doesn't work not because of the Bitcoin aspect. It doesn't work because of the human aspect. Like when did you ever have conversations about how the Visa network works, right? Like it's just like people don't know what happens. Or email. Yeah, like how does it work and what's behind it? People just want to see it work. Yeah. So I think that, to your point, we believe in this strongly. Eventually, for those that do want to get into what is it, why it works this way, yeah, there's great resources today. But for the masses, there has to be a different approach. And I respect, I very much so respect the philosophical, technical aspect of it, of course. But I cannot just convince, for example, my mother-in-law or my cousins into just like, oh, let me tell you, it's just blockchain. Like, you lost me, right? Yeah, I think that's very important, and it will continue to be for the next decade.
Yeah, I was gonna just jump in and like share some advice to listeners of this episode, who are having a tough time orange pilling their family members and friends. Like one thing, like one strategy that I use to everyday people when I get into the topic of Bitcoin, I ask them a simple question. I go, can you relate to inflation? And today that's a very relevant thing, because no matter where you live on this globe, you are going through single, double, triple, or even quadruple inflation. And it's like, do you know about inflation? And it's like, oh, yeah. It's like, it's really bad. And I'm like, I know. And I'm like, and what are you doing to fight that inflation? And I'm yet to meet someone that will give me a secret formula to how to beat inflation apart from saving in Bitcoin, the hardest money we've ever had. And usually I get a response of, oh, well, I don't really have a solution for it. And then I go, well, you know that thing Bitcoin that I've been telling you about for a few years now? Yeah. It's like, do you realize that it's got a scarce supply and it's actually deflationary? Yeah. And they're like, what do you mean it's deflationary? I'm like, well, actually, the value of it goes up because, it gets scarcer every day. Every 10 minutes, TikTok, next block, there's more Bitcoin being mined. And at the moment of this recording, we've crossed already 96% of the supply has already been mined, 96%.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And, then they're like starting to go like, oh, wow, like, what happens when it all gets mined? I go, don't you worry about that, because we're going to be long dead by then. It's 2,140 when the last sat gets mined. But just focus on now. Let's go back to the inflation aspect. And that's how I, try to figure it out. I go, you got to save that money somehow. And you got to switch from a concept of, oh, money comes into the bank at the end of the month. Let me spend just to get it out, to let me save that money as much as I can and compound it as you go forward. So, yeah, I don't know if you've ever used this analogy, but I love playing in this inflation, which maybe like pre-COVID, if I would have mentioned, how'd you like inflation? That would be like, what? What is this disease you're talking about?
What do you mean? Yeah,
but now everybody knows inflation.
Yes, that's true. And you're right. This is worldwide, because we actually have had this conversation, or these types of conversations in Mexico, where, people can relate very easily. There's not a person, regardless of the social class, that you can connect about this. And the nice thing for us is, well, there is a way out. And yes, it's not going to be overnight. And no, I'm not promising you're going to become an overnight millionaire, because that's not how it works. But this inflation thing is real, and you're living it. The scarcity too. That's one that it's always a great conversation. Even again, without getting too deep into math or finance, anybody knows that if something is limited, it has great value, right? So yeah, that's great, man.
Which is the first time ever in history in physical and digital, which is even more mind blowing, to have a scarce asset in the digital and physical realm. Well, there's nothing really that has a finite real estate. There's plenty of land, or Dubai's even and other countries are building more land on water. But Bitcoin is really the only thing that is scarce. I mean, if you don't get that, as Satoshi famously said, I don't have the time to explain it. Sorry, wow, like how much convincing do you need to get? And back to your point, Francis, I also don't tell people you're not going to get rich overnight, saving in Bitcoin. But I can guarantee you one thing, apart from death, of course, we're all going to die one day. But apart from death, the one thing I can guarantee you, in 4 years, your purchasing power is going to be like on a ridiculous amount compared to what it is today, saving in fiat, in pesos, in dollars, in Japanese yen, whatever it is. All fiat trends to zero. The more the money printer goes, it's also like, it's interesting. The more they print, the more fiat loses value, and then the higher purchasing power of Bitcoin goes up. So it's like an opposite spectrum.
It's 100%. It's an inverse.
Crazy.
Yeah. I agree. And I think, again, it's the whole printer, as we know, but maybe not all of your listeners know. Printing money actually is theft from your hard work. The time that you put into it is just in one, not even printing, right? It's just digital. So just push a button, boom, there's more supply. Also, what you work for is actually worth less in terms of, monetary access. So it's crazy, man. But like you said, it is a good time to, I guess, to be in the space. I think next year's going to be incredible. I think next year's going to be amazing.
And another thing I share with people that want to kind of be more involved in Bitcoin and try it out, instead of just like buying and hodling, that's good and all, but like younger generations, especially the Gen Zs, the guys that are trying to set up their own business, especially e-commerce is huge nowadays. Like everybody's spinning up their online store. And I try and advise those people, just add on a payment option to accept Bitcoin. Like, I'm not saying go all the way and get a BTC pay server. Like that would be ideal to get coins straight, bam, to your wallet in your node and everything. That's level number 12. But like, let's start with level 1. There's so many, plugins that you can use. Actually, shout out to BTC pay server, which I love and adore, and I promote every occasion I can. They now even have a WooCommerce, and with BTC Pay Server 2.0, there's like many different website builders when you can just like now plug it in and have it automatically there, which is amazing. And like they've opened the doors to like 200 million plus users. And if you're not using it today, you should really question yourself, why not? Like the fact that you can be accepting payment, like earning Bitcoin through your work, through the service that you provide, may that be a product or coaching or whatever you're doing. I mean, you should be pushing that way. Actually, as going back to Bitcoiner community, we Bitcoiners love supporting other Bitcoin merchants and businesses. If you are offering, and especially going back to the e-commerce aspect, there is so many stores going live every single second. I'm sure while we're recording this podcast, there's like 1,000 new stores that just live. And if you offer Bitcoin, you're going to actually differentiate yourself from like the majority of all the e-stores. And you're actually going to drive a lot of Bitcoiners if you spend some time on Twitter, and more importantly on Nostr, which I'm pushing. I'm a heavy Nostr fanboy. Like if you set up your page on Nostr, throw some notes and say, I accept Bitcoin for my service or product, you're going to get a lot of attention. And that's kind of your way to differentiate yourself from the horde of other businesses. So I really tell people, like 100K is good and all, or even if it's $1 million, but start accepting it, earning Bitcoin and then just storing it over time. I mean, there's no better strategy to go for.
No, you're right. The e-commerce side, actually, you're very right. As far as even invoicing, are you familiar with Zapier?
Yeah.
Have you talked? Maybe you should have John.
Not yet.
I can connect you.
Would
guys.
love to.
Yeah, he's a CEO and founder, and now he has a great team. Parker Lewis has joined.
Nice.
So Zaprite's doing some really cool stuff for those merchants that are maybe afraid. So they're giving the option. And I mean it's easy. Any merchant can start accepting Bitcoin through Zaprite. It's incredible. Yeah, when we're done, I'll connect you guys.
Sounds good. And just to add to it, another, if someone who's listening to this episode is like, yeah, I've got a e-store, but like, what's the point, GG? Like, yeah, I understand numbers go up, but why should I do it? Well, if you're currently using PayPal, my friend, you're paying exuberant fees, especially if you're selling high-end products. You're paying like 4 or 5% processing fee, which, going back to the middleman seeker, rent-seeking mafia, are basically getting a chunk of your profits for doing nothing, for rerouting your payments through intermediary banks. And then if you live in another jurisdiction with another currency, you got to pay another few percent to convert it, to do the FX exchange, right? So you're paying like 7-8%. And then one sunny day, you may go into PayPal and they're like, there's been a legitimate transaction in your account. We're going to freeze your account and now send us a DNA sample and a P sample and this, that. And you're like, huh? But why?
Yeah.
None of that happens on a Bitcoin standard. You get your sats instantly. There's no middleman taking his percent cut. There's no having to prove why you got these funds. I mean, just like the advantages outweigh the disadvantages by a mile. So, I mean, it's like a no-brainer.
100%.
And, other parts also, like, depending where you live in the world, I actually, you'll be surprised. I left Europe earlier this summer. I live in Russia now because my wife's Russian. And as most people know, due to many sanctions and financial sanctions, like, Russia's been cut off from the SWIFT, so there's no way of you, if you're a Russian merchant and you want to be selling something to the rest of the world, crypto or Bitcoin essentially is the only way. And a lot of people have been using USDT as the ways of transferring money in and out of the country.
Of course.
But, stable coins are good and all, but, there is no USDT community that's going to support. You're a USDT fanboy. Yeah, I'm going to come spend on your store. But if you have a Bitcoin option, man, you're gonna be magnetizing a lot of Bitcoiners to come over to your stores. Depending where you live in the world, it's not just the fees, but also like the restrictions of you being able to sell your product. Because, Francis, with the invention of the internet, how we're connected through these supercomputers, which we're recording this podcast now, we can be, you're sitting in North America, I'm sitting all across on the other side of the world, where we're communicating, talking real talk. And now we can actually exchange, value instantly with no middleman.
That's incredible.
Like I truly see Bitcoin as not this. A lot of people used to say, maybe not now, but like a few years ago when I got in the rabbit hole in 2017, people were saying, "Oh, Bitcoin's the next internet," and I was like, I don't know about the next internet. But then I came to a realization a few years down the road. I was like, Bitcoin is finishing what the internet thought it allowed us to transact, via data anywhere. But we always had this money problem on exchanging value. And then Bitcoin came to be. And now, it's the most prosperous and most highest potential time ever in history to do whatever you want to do, anywhere you want to do, at whatever time you want to do. So if you're still sitting on your mom's couch and crying, why is the world so bad? Why is inflation hitting me so hard? You should go out, touch some grass, and think of a good business to launch on a Bitcoin standard.
100%, man. I like that. That was really good way to close it. No, it's true. And I love it. I love the passion because we need more of that. We're still so early though.
Yeah. Going back.
There's new innovations for businesses, but there's still going to be so much that we haven't even imagined.
But isn't that amazing, Francis, to jump in? There's so much to build here. It's not like you're getting into Bitcoin 50 years in the future when there's so many things. Like if you compare it to the legacy markets where we have, a business for anything. Now there's so much stuff to build and people are like, oh, but I don't know what to do. Like, how do I get a Bitcoin job? It's not so much how do I get a Bitcoin job in Unchained or wherever you want to apply to. I mean, businesses are, onboarding a lot of people, but there's so many things you can actually provide in this system that it's the perfect timing, and it's not a matter of, 2017 when still I was like, is it going to succeed, especially with the block wars? And like, it was like, is the protocol going to get taken over? what's the perspective? But now with the legitimizing and the ETF approvals and the Wall Street coming in and governments, looking every day, I'm reading a new newsletter of a new government talking about a Bitcoin strategic reserve. It's not going anywhere, like now it's the time to start building your Bitcoin business. And it can be something super simple. You don't have to go Francisco's way of, doing a Bitcoin only exchange in a huge country.
Yes,
You can do something simple. You can be like Gigi the pleb that started a podcast a year and a half ago, and who knows where this journey takes you. But, whatever your passion is, my passion is talking to people and sharing value through storytelling. Your passion may be creating music, creating, drawings. It can be events. It can be, man, you name it, whatever it is. If you love doing stuff out of wood, crafting, whatever it is, just set it up to a simple store. You don't even need the website. Do an Instagram page or whatever. So easy.
You need a landing page, and the other one is that, like you said, listening to the podcast definitely helps, and then going to whatever's available, whether it's a Bitcoin meetup or the networking is very important.
This is the biggest one.
It really is, because of what we talked about at the beginning of the pod, right? Which is Bitcoiners by nature are welcoming, and even within a competitive environment, there's a sense of, the pie is huge. We all win if Bitcoin wins. So what can I help you with? Maybe it's me personally, or I can connect you with someone that is looking for like-minded business. So 100%, man. 100%.
And another thing, not just connecting, finding perhaps your co-founder or your partner or your designer or your angel investor. The other thing is also like getting your idea validated, for free, if I may say. You're not going to some, agency or whatnot, but you go to a conference, you tell them, hey guys, I've been working on this for a few months. What do you think? And Bitcoiners tend to be pretty straightforward. They're not going to give you fluff and be like, oh, wow, it's amazing. It's going to be like, hey, man, this is good. But did you think about, adding X, Y, and Z? And you're like, I never thought about that. And it's like, actually, I can help you with X, and you never know, bouncing off ideas. And especially sometimes it can be very daunting when people are working on their own project, in their own room and not really showing it to anyone. And then even if they go public and they drop it on Nostr or X or whatever, and it gets no engagement, you're like, it's a terrible idea. It's not going anywhere. No, maybe it just wasn't the right medium. Go to a meetup, or even better, go to a conference and share that. You're going to be surprised by the amount of feedback you're going to get back. And you might land to something really special.
This is very true, man. This is very true.
So
sounds like you've done it too.
Yes, I have. I have indeed, and I preach what I do myself. And I always tell people, don't be shy to share your ideas. Don't be afraid someone's going to pinch it. I mean, you never know. Maybe someone will pinch it, but just make sure to get it validated, because I think that's super important. There's no point of you dedicated 1 year of your life to something, and then people are like, actually, nah, it's not going to go anywhere, man.
There's something to say about harsh feedback, because I laugh throughout what you were telling, because I've gone through that, and it's the best type of communication you can have, because it's not necessarily a hate. It's more of a, maybe you haven't thought of this, or
how do I improve it? You're never going to get the best idea right out the gate unless your name is Steve Jobs. We're not all Steve, so we need to get that validation.
This is very true. Feedback is amazing, and then with that said, also take the feedback, compare it. And, always question if the strategy aligns with maybe the feedback, because that's something we've learned along the way too. But we've had awesome feedback from different people in the space in different parts of the country or the world, I guess.
Amazing. Well, I'll slowly round it up as we're approaching kind of this 1 hour mark, this sweet spot that I like to keep the episodes on. Usually I finish it, Francisco, with what is one piece of advice you would tell people only starting their Bitcoin journey, but I'll switch it a little bit for you, because you have a very entrepreneurial background. So let me ask you, even though we did kind of talk about this in this last segment, but what is some advice that you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to start building in the Bitcoin space based off everything you've gone through in the last few years?
That's a very good question. Recently, so I live in Austin, and my co-founder and myself, we just recently finished the cohort at Wolf in New York. Which is it's a Bitcoin accelerator, similar to Y Combinator, but for
there's
Bitcoin
a big
companies.
Bitcoiner called Robert Breedlove that plugs it every time I listen to the episode. So I've heard of Wolf.
Okay. So one thing that I guess bringing it back to our experience there. And I'm going to be really open and upfront about, the journey that we've taken. I honestly thought, as an entrepreneur and someone that's been in fiat world and have been part of marketing and have been part of strategy and territory expansion, I really thought, you know what? I kind of know a good amount of stuff. And I know what I'm getting myself into. Speaking of the feedback, sure, I'll take the feedback. But generally speaking, I think I know what I'm doing. And I think the one piece from everything I just said is you don't. So be humble and truly take if you want to take that step into entrepreneurship, know that a lot of things do change and it's okay. There's been times where we did question if what we were doing was the right way to do it, how long it was going to take us, is it even worth pursuing? And of course, you fast forward a month or two from that moment of are we doing it? And there's always this, wow, I'm so glad I got over that, which will be, let's call it entrepreneur proof of work.
Yeah.
So doesn't matter how many books you read, how many podcasts you listen to, at the end of the day, going through this is the most rewarding thing you'll ever experience, and be open to the feedback and the strategy that maybe others have from experiencing it themselves. That only comes from being humble. So I don't think my co-founder and I are, I don't think we put ourselves in a position to brag, but we were definitely put in a position to even humble ourselves more, which then allows us to really grow. I think that's like the one huge takeaway from stuff we've lived over the past 6 months.
Incredible. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, I would fully agree. Sometimes, especially, younger entrepreneurs, they think like the ego is like up here. They're like, oh, I know it all. I've got all the connections. I'm going to smash this. But sometimes, putting your feet on the ground, being humble and being open to constructive criticism can be the most powerful and rewarding thing. So yeah, I agree. You should just listen to other people's advice, and if you want to act on it, that's your own choice. But just be open to criticism.
That's true.
So I think
that's the other part. You're 100%, man. Gigi, I agree. So that's a huge piece, and I think it applies as a person too, right?
Yeah.
Bitcoiner to Bitcoiner friends. I'm pretty sure at some point you and I will meet in person. And,
yeah.
We'll share more stories. But yeah, man, that Odell. I guess very famous.
Stay humble, stack sats.
Stay humble, stack sats. It really is true, regardless of the cycle, regardless of the price. It really stands true.
Just to add to the stay humble, stack sats, I've got a new one, which was a good guest. Now, my good friend, thankfully, to a conference that I went to Prague and BTC Prague. He goes by the name of Sovereign Origin. He says, stack sats, stack time. And that's my new motto, because, by stacking sats, you are taking your time back. So stack sats, stay humble, one part, and then stack sats, stack time. And then you're like in this golden equation of being it. Francisco, cool. Man, it's been a blast having you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Before I let you go, where can we send our listeners to learn more about Yopaki and connect with you online?
100%. So the easiest way, because we're so active on Twitter, our handle is @Yopaki_. That's it, @Yopaki_. Then our website is yourbtcstory.com. And both my co-founder and myself are very active on Twitter. We're not as active as we should be on Nostr. We have our profiles, but that's something we're going to work on as New Year's. On Twitter, I'm under Francisco BTC. So if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot me a DM. Make sure to download the app. It's on App Store right now, Android in the next 2 weeks.
Amazing. Well, Francisco, best of luck with everything you and your co-founder have going for Yopaki. I wish you a very prosperous 2025. If there's any way Gigi can help you out and anything, please feel free anytime to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to help you guys out, because you are really, I love the projects that are helping educate people, and especially bringing in a cultural aspect. I think is super nice. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share it with me and our listeners.
Likewise, Gigi. Likewise so much. It was a pleasure, man.
Amazing. See you, brother. Until next time, take care.
Congrats. Mate.
I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did recording it. I would really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, and share this episode to help this podcast grow. Thanks for supporting the show. And until next time, stay safe
and stack sats.